I landed on the scorched airstrip at 14 o'clock on a Tuesday in August. 27 years old and already questioning every decision that led me here. The heat hit me like opening an oven door, sucking the moisture from my lungs before I could take a second breath. The transport plane's engines roared behind me as I grabbed my gear and stepped onto cracked asphalt that shimmered with rising heat waves. Weather Research Facility Epsilon 9 sat before me like a mirage, a collection of white concrete structures arranged in a wide circle, connected by covered walkways that offered protection from the relentless sun. Solar panels covered every available surface, their dark surfaces drinking in the brutal desert light. Everything about the facility seemed designed to withstand the harshest environment on Earth. The plane departed within minutes, leaving me alone on that strip with my duffel bag and a growing sense of unease. A figure emerged from the main building, moving slowly but deliberately across the compound. Even from a distance, I could see the military bearing in his walk. Corporal Marcus Webb. "Reporting for assignment, sir," I called out, standing at attention despite the heat making my uniform stick to my skin. The man stopped a few feet away, studying me with dark eyes set in a face that looked like weathered leather. Major Daniel Cortez extended his hand, his grip firm and dry despite the temperature. "Welcome to hell, Corporal."
That is what we call it here.
Not officially, but accurately. His voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too much. "Let us get you inside before the heat cooks your brain." The main entrance was a double airlock system designed to keep the scorching air outside where it belonged. The transition from the furnace outside to the climate-controlled interior felt like stepping between worlds. My ears popped from the pressure change. "The facility maintains consistent temperature and humidity," Major Cortez explained as we walked through sterile hallways lined with equipment lockers and weather monitoring stations. "The human body cannot survive long in the conditions outside during peak heat hours. We have lost people who thought they could." We reached his office, a small room dominated by banks of monitors displaying temperature readings, seismic activity, and atmospheric data. He gestured for me to sit while he retrieved a folder from a locked drawer. "Your service record shows 4 years active duty, specialization in extreme environment operations, psychological evaluation scores in the top percentile. All very impressive." He closed the folder and leaned forward, his expression hardening. "None of it matters here if you do not follow the 7 rules." I felt my stomach tighten. "7 rules, sir?" Major Cortez pulled a heavy card from his desk drawer. Not laminated plastic like standard protocol cards, but actual metal, etched with text that had been filled with what looked like dark red paint, or perhaps something else. These rules were written by the first team stationed here in 1967. They learned them through experience, fatal experience. He slid the card across the desk. "Read them now. Memorize them before sunset. Your life depends on understanding what they mean." I picked up the metal card, its surface warm to the touch despite the air conditioning. The text was clear, each rule numbered and precise. Rule 1. Never go outside alone. Ever. Not for 30 seconds. Not for any reason. Rule 2. Do not respond to voices calling your name from outside the facility. Rule 3. If you see someone standing perfectly still in the desert, report it immediately but do not approach. Rule 4. Close all interior doors before 21 o'clock. Keep them closed until 6 o'clock. Rule 5. Do not investigate sounds coming from the ventilation system at night. Rule 6. If the temperature inside drops below 70 degrees after sunset, gather in the central hub immediately. Rule 7. Never shine a light into the abandoned well behind the facility. Never look into it. Never go near it. Sir, what is the reasoning behind? The reasoning is survival, Corporal Webb. That is all you need to know initially. Major Cortez stood, indicating the briefing was over. "Come, meet the rest of the team." We walked through more corridors, passing rooms filled with scientific equipment I did not recognize. The facility felt larger inside than it had appeared from the airstrip, a maze of passages that seemed to extend far beyond what the exterior suggested. The common area was a large space with a commercial kitchen, dining tables and several worn couches arranged around a television that probably received 3 channels on a good day. 4 people occupied the room, playing cards and drinking coffee despite the afternoon hour. "Team, this is Corporal Marcus Webb," Major Cortez announced. "Webb, meet your colleagues." A woman in her mid-30s stood first, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Athletic build, sharp green eyes that assessed me quickly. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, meteorological specialist. Welcome to the sandbox, Webb. A burly man with red hair and a thick beard raised his coffee mug in greeting. Sergeant Tyler Henderson. Try not to die in your first week. We just got the paperwork filed on the last guy. Henderson. Major Cortez's voice carried a warning. What? Kid should know what he is walking into. Henderson shrugged and returned to his cards. The third person was a wiry man in his late 20s with sandy brown hair and nervous energy that manifested in constant fidgeting. Specialist Aaron Palmer, communications and tech support. The radios here act weird sometimes. Not malfunction weird, just weird. The fourth member of the team stood last, moving with deliberate slowness. Tall, maybe 6'3", with dark hair going gray at the temples and eyes that seemed to look past rather than at me. Dr. Richard Blackwell, Geological Survey. You will find that things operate differently here, Corporal Webb. I suggest you adapt quickly. All right, show and tell is over, Major Cortez said. Mitchell, get Webb oriented on the daily schedule. Henderson Palmer. You have perimeter checks in 30 minutes. Blackwell. The seismic readings from Sector 7 need analysis. The team dispersed with practiced efficiency. Major Cortez pulled me aside before leaving. One more thing, Webb. We maintain strict accountability here. Roll call every morning at 6 and every evening at 21. If someone does not show up, we search immediately, no delays. No exceptions. After he left, Lieutenant Mitchell gestured for me to follow her. As we walked, she kept up a steady stream of information delivered in a clipped professional tone. This facility was established during the Cold War as an early warning station. Now it is officially a weather research outpost, though we do other monitoring as well. Seismic, atmospheric, electromagnetic. We are pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Nearest town is 87 miles east. Supply drops every 2 weeks. Personnel rotation every 12 weeks. We stopped at a door marked with my name on a temporary placard. Your quarters, small but functional. You have your own bathroom, which is more than most military postings offer. Keep your water usage reasonable. We recycle, but the system has limits. The room was indeed small. A bed, a desk, a locker, and a single window with reinforced glass that looked out onto the desert landscape. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the sand in shades of orange and red. One thing about that rules card, Mitchell said, her professional demeanor cracking slightly. Major Cortez was not exaggerating. People have died here, 3 in the last 2 years. All of them broke at least one rule. What happened to them? I asked. She was quiet for a moment, staring out the window at the darkening desert. The official reports say exposure, equipment failure, navigation errors. But we were here. We know better. Know what? Mitchell turned to face me directly. That there is something wrong with this place. Has been since the facility opened. Maybe before. The rules exist because people learned the hard way what happens when you ignore them. So do yourself a favor, Webb. Be skeptical if you want. Question everything if that is your nature. But follow those rules exactly. She left me alone to unpack. I pulled out the metal rules card again, running my fingers over the etched text. The dark red filling the grooves looked more like rust than paint, now that I examined it closely. Or dried blood. The first week passed in a routine that felt almost normal. Wake at 0530, roll call at 0600, breakfast, equipment checks, data collection, meals at scheduled times, evening roll call at 2100, sleep. The work itself was straightforward if repetitive. We monitored weather patterns, recorded seismic activity, maintained the facility systems, and transmitted data back to headquarters twice daily. The team maintained professional distance, though I noticed small things. How Henderson always checked sight lines before entering a room. How Palmer never wore headphones, always keeping one ear free to listen to his surroundings. How Dr. Blackwell spent hours staring at geological surveys, making notes in a leather journal he never let anyone else read. How Lieutenant Mitchell kept her back to walls whenever possible. And how everyone, without fail, closed and locked their doors at exactly 21 o'clock every night. On my 5th evening, Palmer and I were running diagnostics in the communications room when he suddenly stopped typing and tilted his head listening. "You hear that?" he asked. I listened but heard nothing except the usual hum of equipment. "Hear what?" "Never mind. Probably just the air conditioning." but his hands shook slightly as he resumed working. That night, lying in my bed in the darkness, I heard it too, a sound coming from the ventilation grate in my ceiling. Not mechanical, not the rattle of loose screws or the whistle of air pressure. It sounded like whispering, multiple voices speaking too quietly to make out words, but clearly human in origin. I remembered Rule 5. Do not investigate sounds coming from the ventilation system at night. I turned on my side, pulled the pillow over my head, and eventually fell into uneasy sleep. On day 9, everything changed. Henderson and Mitchell were scheduled for exterior sensor maintenance. Standard procedure called for a 2-person team. 45-minute maximum duration, constant radio contact. They suited up in the heat-resistant gear we used for daytime exterior work and headed out through the airlock at 9:00. I was monitoring their progress from the communications room with Palmer when Henderson's voice came through with unusual urgency. Base, we have visual on an individual approximately 200 yards southwest of our position, requesting instructions. Palmer and I exchanged glances. There should not be anyone out there. The facility was restricted military property, and we were literally in the middle of one of the most inhospitable places in North America. Major Cortez's voice came through immediately. Describe the individual. Male, approximately 6 feet tall, wearing what looks like a uniform. He is just standing there, not moving at all, not seeking shade, just standing in full sun. Mitchell's voice joined in. Sir, he has been in the same position for at least 3 minutes. No one can stand still like that in this heat. Rule 3. If you see someone standing perfectly still in the desert, report it immediately, but do not approach. Do not approach, Major Cortez ordered. Mark the location and return to base immediately. Sir, if someone is out there, Henderson started. That is not someone, Sergeant. That is an order. Return to base now. There was a pause, then Mitchell's voice tight with tension. Understood, sir. Returning to base. They made it back within 10 minutes, both of them visibly shaken despite their training. In the decontamination room, I watched through the observation window as they stripped off their gear with shaking hands. Major Cortez called an immediate meeting in the common area. All 6 of us gathered, and he pulled up a map on the wall screen. Mitchell marked the location. She used a laser pointer to indicate a spot on the map. Major Cortez made a note in his tablet, then pulled up what looked like a log file with dozens of similar marks. This is the 47th sighting in this facility's operational history, he said quietly. Every single one has occurred in daylight hours. Every single figure has been standing perfectly still, and every single person who approached one has disappeared. Disappeared how? I asked, completely. No bodies recovered, no equipment found, no tracks beyond their approach path. He looked at each of us in turn. This is why Rule 3 exists. This is why we do not investigate. This is why we follow procedures without deviation. Dr. Blackwell spoke up for the first time, his deep voice measured. I have studied the geological surveys of this area extensively. There are underground formations here that do not match any known natural patterns. Caverns that extend far deeper than should be possible in this rock type. Electromagnetic readings that fluctuate without correlation to surface conditions. What are you saying? Palmer asked. I am saying that this facility may have been built here for reasons beyond weather monitoring. And whatever is below us has been here far longer than we have. That night I lay awake listening to the sounds of the facility. The hum of air conditioning, the occasional creak of metal expanding and contracting, and from the ventilation grate above me those whispers, clearer now, though still not quite intelligible. At some point I dozed off. I woke to the sound of my door handle rattling. Not violently, just a gentle testing of the lock. I checked my watch. 3:47 o'clock. Long after doors were supposed to be closed and locked per Rule 4, the handle stopped rattling. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my room. Slow, deliberate steps that moved past my door, continued down the hall, then returned. The steps stopped directly outside. Marcus. My name spoken in a voice I did not recognize, male deep with an odd echo to it. Marcus Webb. Open the door. Rule 2. Do not respond to voices calling your name from outside the facility. But I was inside the facility. The rule did not technically apply here, unless it did, and the semantics were meant to include any separation from the speaker. Marcus, I need to speak with you. It is important. The voice had changed slightly. Now it sounded like Major Cortez. "There has been an incident. Open your door." I remained silent, barely breathing, watching the door handle. It rattled again, more insistently. "Corporal Webb, that is an order. Open this door immediately." Still I did not move. The voice cycled through variations. Sometimes it sounded like Mitchell. Sometimes like Henderson. Once it sounded like my father, dead for 3 years, calling me by my childhood nickname. Eventually, the footsteps retreated down the hallway. I did not sleep again that night. At morning roll call, I mentioned what happened. Major Cortez nodded grimly. "It tests the new personnel, seeing who will follow rules and who will break them." "You did well, Webb." "What would have happened if I had opened the door?" I asked. "We do not know. No one who has opened their door during those hours has been present for morning roll call." The days blended together after that, routine punctuated by small violations of normalcy. A figure standing motionless on the horizon, whispers from the ventilation system that grew louder each night, doors rattling at odd hours, footsteps in empty corridors. We all adapted. It became part of the job, like filing reports or checking equipment. Strange became normal. Impossible became routine, until Specialist Palmer broke Rule 5. It happened 2 weeks into my assignment. Palmer had been getting progressively worse, jumping at sounds, avoiding certain hallways, spending longer and longer periods in the communications room where he seemed to feel safest. I was passing his quarters at around 23 o'clock when I heard the crash. I knocked, calling his name. No response. The door was locked, but I had override access for emergencies. Palmer's room looked like a tornado had hit it. Furniture overturned, papers scattered everywhere, and in the center of it all, Palmer stood on his desk, staring up at the ventilation grate with a flashlight in one hand and a screwdriver in the other. "Palmer, what are you doing?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. "They are in there," he said without looking at me. His voice had a strange flat quality. "I can hear them. They know things, Marcus. They know my name. They know about my sister. They know what I did. Palmer, get down. You are breaking Rule 5. The rules do not matter. They are already here. They have always been here." He started unscrewing the grate. "I just need to see them. Once I see them, I will understand." I moved forward to stop him, but Palmer was faster. He pulled the grate free, shone his flashlight up into the duct, and screamed. Not a scream of fear, a scream of agony that cut off abruptly into wet, choking sounds. He dropped the flashlight and collapsed onto the desk, then slid to the floor. I ran to him, calling for medical assistance on my radio. His eyes were wide open, blood running from his nose and ears. His mouth moved, trying to form words, but only producing bubbles of blood. Major Cortez and Dr. Blackwell arrived within seconds. Blackwell checked Palmer's vitals, then looked up and shook his head. "Massive cerebral hemorrhage. He is gone." We all looked up at the open ventilation grate. The darkness beyond seemed somehow deeper than it should be, as if the duct led not to other rooms but to somewhere else entirely. "Seal it," Major Cortez ordered. "Seal every grate in this section." Over the next hour, Henderson and I went through Palmer's wing of the facility, screwing metal plates over every ventilation opening. We could hear things moving in the ducts above us, keeping pace with our progress. Not the scurrying of rats or the flutter of birds. Something larger, something that made the metal groan under its weight. Palmer's death was officially ruled a cerebral aneurysm. The report made no mention of the ventilation system or Rule 5. His body was shipped out on the next supply run, and his room was sealed pending investigation that I suspected would never actually occur. We were down to 5 now. Me, Major Cortez, Mitchell, Henderson, and Dr. Blackwell. The facility felt emptier despite only losing one person. The silence between us grew heavier. 3 days after Palmer's death, a replacement arrived. Sergeant Diana Foster, 29 years old, with red hair pulled back in a severe bun and gray eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Major Cortez gave her the same briefing he had given me. The same metal rules card, the same warnings. Foster listened to everything, asked intelligent questions, and accepted the rules without visible skepticism. I thought maybe she would be different. Maybe she would listen. Maybe she would survive. That hope lasted exactly 6 days. Henderson and Foster were on perimeter patrol, checking the external sensors that ringed the facility at a half-mile radius. Standard procedure called for the team to stay together, maintain constant radio contact, and return within 2 hours. They had been out for 90 minutes when Henderson's voice came through, agitated. Base, Foster has wandered off. She is not responding to radio calls. I have visual on her heading west toward the abandoned well. Rule 7. Never shine a light into the abandoned well. Never look into it. Never go near it. Henderson, what is your position? Major Cortez demanded. 300 yards from the well. Foster is 200 yards ahead of me and moving fast. Stop her. Use any means necessary. She is running now, sir. I cannot catch up. We all rushed to the observation deck, the highest point in the facility with 360-degree views of the surrounding desert. Through binoculars, I could see Henderson, a small figure in heat-resistant gear sprinting across the sand. Ahead of him, Foster was indeed running, her movements jerky and unnatural like a puppet on strings. And beyond them both, the well, a circular stone structure that looked ancient, far older than the facility. Even from this distance, even in full daylight, it seemed wrong. The shadows around it were too dark. The air above it seemed to shimmer not from heat but from something else. Foster reached the well and did not slow down. She grabbed the stone edge and leaned over, looking down into its depths. Then she climbed over the edge and jumped. Henderson reached the well seconds later, skidding to a stop at the edge. His voice came through the radio, broken with static. She is gone. I cannot see her. There is no sound of impact. She just fell and disappeared. Henderson, step away from the well, Major Cortez ordered. Do not look into it. Return to base immediately. Sir, I should. That is a direct order, Sergeant. Return now. Henderson made it back, but he was different. Quieter than usual, spending long hours staring at nothing. During our next scheduled meal, he refused to eat, said he was not hungry. The next day, same thing. By the third day, he looked gaunt, his skin taking on an unhealthy gray pallor. Henderson, you need to eat, Mitchell told him during breakfast. You are wasting away. Not hungry, he muttered. Have not been hungry since the well. Do not need food anymore. That is not how human biology works, Dr. Blackwell said sharply. You are experiencing psychological trauma affecting your appetite. Force yourself to eat, or we will put you on medical leave. Henderson looked at Blackwell with hollow eyes. I looked into the well, just for a second after Foster went in. I had to know what happened to her. And now I know. I understand. She understood too at the end. We are not supposed to be here. This place is not for us. Major Cortez stood abruptly. Henderson, you are confined to quarters pending medical evaluation. Mitchell Webb, escort him. Henderson did not resist as we led him to his room. He seemed almost relieved, like he had been waiting for permission to give up. We locked the door from the outside, per Major Cortez's instructions. That night I heard screaming from Henderson's wing. We rushed there to find his door still locked from the outside, but when we opened it, the room was empty. The window was closed and locked from the inside. His gear was still in his locker. His boots were by the bed. Tyler Henderson had vanished from a locked room. We searched the entire facility. Every room, every closet, every storage space. He was gone. 4 of us now. Major Cortez, Dr. Blackwell, Lieutenant Mitchell, and me. The facility designed for 8 felt enormous around us. We need to request evacuation, I said during our emergency meeting. 2 dead, 3 vanished in less than a month. This posting is not sustainable. Headquarters will not authorize evacuation based on personnel losses they attribute to natural causes, Major Cortez said tiredly. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past week. I have requested it before. Multiple times. They always send replacements instead. Then we refuse to accept replacements, Mitchell said. We cannot keep watching people die. That is not our decision to make, Lieutenant. Dr. Blackwell spoke up, his voice thoughtful. I have been reviewing historical records of this facility. The geological surveys, the incident reports, the original construction documentation. This site was chosen deliberately, not for weather research. The facility was built directly over what the original surveys called an anomaly, a gap in the geological strata that should not exist. The well predates our facility by centuries, possibly millennia, and according to records from 1967, the first team tried to explore it. What did they find? I asked. Nothing. Or rather, they found nothing because the 3 men who descended into the well never came back up. The rope they used was still intact, just hanging down into the darkness. When they pulled it up, it was not cut or frayed. It simply ended, as if the men had evaporated. Why would they build a facility here after that? Mitchell demanded. because the anomalies increased after the exploration attempt. Electromagnetic spikes, seismic activity, and sightings of figures in the desert. The military wanted to monitor whatever was happening, to understand it, to see if it could be weaponized. Could it? I asked. Dr. Blackwell looked at me with those distant eyes. I believe it has been feeding on us for decades. Every person stationed here, whether they die, vanish, or survive, provides it with something. Fear, attention, life force, whatever terminology you prefer. We are not researchers studying a phenomenon. We are offerings. Major Cortez slammed his hand on the table. That is enough, Doctor. We are military personnel following orders, not characters in a ghost story. Are we not? Blackwell asked quietly. Then explain the rules. Explain Palmer's death. Explain how Henderson vanished from a locked room. Use your military training and logical mind to provide a rational explanation. Major Cortez had no answer. The next week crawled by in oppressive silence. The four of us maintained minimum operations, collecting data, transmitting reports, following the rules with religious dedication. We moved through the facility like ghosts ourselves, speaking only when necessary, jumping at shadows. The whispers from the ventilation system grew louder, clear enough now that I could almost make out words. They spoke of depths and darkness, of time that stretched in directions I could not comprehend, of things that waited patiently below while we scurried around above. The figures in the desert appeared more frequently, sometimes alone, sometimes in groups. They would stand motionless for hours under the brutal sun, arranged in patterns that might have been significant if I could understand them. Once I counted 17 figures forming a perfect circle around the facility, each exactly the same distance from the outer walls. The doors rattled every night now. Not just mine, but all of them. Footsteps echoed through hallways we knew were empty. Shadows moved independently of any light source. The temperature would drop suddenly in random rooms, violating the carefully controlled climate system, only to return to normal within minutes. And through it all, we followed the rules. We never went outside alone. We never responded to voices. We never approached the figures. We closed doors at 21 o'clock. We did not investigate the ventilation sounds. We gathered in the central hub when the temperature dropped, and we never ever went near the well. On my 30th day at Epsilon 9, new replacements arrived. 2 of them this time, Corporal James Sullivan and Private Rebecca Cole, both young, both confident, both certain that their training had prepared them for anything. Major Cortez gave them the briefing. The rules, the warnings, the history. Sullivan listened with poorly concealed amusement. Cole at least tried to appear serious, but I saw the skepticism in her eyes. "These rules seem excessive," Sullivan said, holding up the metal card. "With respect, sir, this reads like something from a horror movie." "Then consider this the director's cut," Mitchell said coldly, "and understand that you are not watching. You are starring in it, and there are no happy endings here." That night I heard Sullivan in the common area with Cole laughing about the rules, about the scared survivors jumping at shadows, about how deployment stress could make people see patterns in random events. All the rational explanations that had died in my own mind weeks ago. I should have warned them more forcefully, should have made them understand. But exhaustion and resignation had worn away my urgency. Let them learn, I thought bitterly. Let them see for themselves. I regret that thought now. 2 nights later, I was jerked awake by screaming. Not over the intercom, not from a specific room. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, echoing through the ventilation system, reverberating off the walls, penetrating the very foundation of the facility. I grabbed my radio and called for a roll call. Major Cortez responded. Dr. Blackwell responded. Lieutenant Mitchell responded. Corporal Sullivan did not respond. Private Cole did not respond. We found Sullivan's room first. The door was closed but not locked. Inside, the window was open. The reinforced glass shattered from inside out. Sullivan's gear was laid out neatly on the bed, his boots placed carefully by the door. On the wall above his bed, written in what looked like blood, was a message. We answered. Cole's room was in the west wing. Her door was also closed, but when we opened it, we found it completely empty. Not just Cole, everything, the bed, the desk, the locker, all of it gone, leaving just an empty room with bare walls and concrete floor. It was as if the room had never been furnished, as if Cole had never existed. Major Cortez called for an immediate sweep of the facility. The five of us moved through every corridor, every room, checking, calling out, finding nothing. Then Dr. Blackwell stopped suddenly in the central hallway. "Listen," he said. We all fell silent. From below us, from somewhere beneath the facility's foundation, came a sound. Rhythmic, mechanical, like massive gears turning slowly, grinding against each other. The sound we should not be able to hear because there was nothing below us except solid rock. Except there was not solid rock below us. There was that anomaly, that gap in the geological strata, those impossible caverns that extended into depths that should not exist. "We need to leave," I said. "Request emergency evacuation. Declare the facility compromised. Whatever it takes, we need to get out of here." Major Cortez looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. "I have requested evacuation 17 times in my 3 years here. Every request has been denied. We will remain on station until our scheduled rotation, or until we are relieved by death or madness. Those appear to be the only options they will accept. Then we abandon our posts," Mitchell said. "Walk out. Take one of the vehicles and drive to the nearest town. The vehicles require authorization codes to start. Codes that come from headquarters. Codes that change weekly." Major Cortez shook his head. "We are trapped here until they decide to let us leave." Dr. Blackwell smiled, though there was no humor in it. "Not trapped, positioned. We are exactly where they want us. Where we have always been meant to be." Over the next 72 hours, the facility descended into something beyond nightmare. The grinding sound from below became constant, accompanied by vibrations that made equipment rattle and dust fall from ceiling tiles. The temperature fluctuations grew more extreme. One room would be 75 degrees while the adjacent room dropped to 50. The pattern made no sense, violated every principle of thermodynamics. The figures in the desert multiplied. I counted 43 of them at one point, all standing in concentric circles around the facility. They never moved during daylight, but when I checked the same positions after dark, they had relocated. Closer. Always closer. Mitchell stopped sleeping entirely. I would find her in the observation deck at all hours, watching the desert through binoculars, documenting the figure positions with obsessive precision. Her logs filled notebook after notebook with sketches, measurements, calculations that dissolved into increasingly frantic scribbles. "They are forming a pattern," she told me during one of these vigils. "Look at the positions. Plot them on a map. They are creating a shape, a symbol, something that existed before humans had language to describe it." I looked at her maps. She was right. The figures, when their positions were connected, formed a geometric design of interlocking circles and angular lines. Beautiful and terrible and utterly alien. Major Cortez retreated into procedure. He maintained the schedules with rigid precision, demanded reports be filed exactly on time, insisted on proper military bearing at all times. Structure was the only defense he had left against the chaos consuming the facility. I watched him slowly fracture behind that facade, saw the cracks widening with each passing day. Dr. Blackwell spent every moment in his quarters or the geological survey room, surrounded by ancient maps and modern sensor data, filling his leather journal with notes in increasingly illegible handwriting. Once I looked over his shoulder and saw pages covered not with words but with symbols that hurt my eyes to focus on. "What are you writing?" I asked. "Translation," he said without looking up. "They speak through the earth itself, through electromagnetic patterns and seismic fluctuations."
"I am learning their language."
Or perhaps it is learning me. I backed away slowly and did not disturb him again. On the 43rd night, the temperature inside the facility dropped to 68 degrees. Per Rule 6, we gathered in the central hub, the four of us sitting in silence while our breath misted in the air. The heating system roared at maximum capacity, but the temperature continued to fall. 65 degrees, 60, 55, why is this happening? I asked, my teeth chattering. "They are coming inside," Dr. Blackwell said calmly. "The boundary between their space and ours is thinning. Soon there will be no boundary at all." The lights flickered, once, twice, then went out completely, plunging us into absolute darkness. Emergency lighting should have activated immediately. It did not. We sat in that perfect blackness, listening to the grinding sound from below growing louder, now accompanied by something else. Footsteps. Hundreds of footsteps. Thousands. An army moving through corridors that should not exist, climbing stairs that were not there, approaching from directions that had no name. Major Cortez's voice cut through the darkness, steady and commanding. Hold position. Do not move. Do not speak. Wait for light. We waited. Minutes or hours, impossible to tell. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they seemed to be right on top of us, all around us, moving through the very space we occupied. I felt presences passing through my body, cold spots that made my organs contract painfully, heard breathing that was not quite breathing, whispers in languages that predated human thought. Then as suddenly as they went out, the lights came back on. We were not alone in the central hub. They stood among us. Dozens of them. Figures that looked almost human but were not, could never be. They wore faces I recognized. Palmer, with blood still running from his nose and ears. Henderson, gray and skeletal, his eyes sunken into deep hollows. Foster, wet and dripping with liquid that was not water, her skin wrinkled like she had been submerged for weeks. Sullivan, covered in cuts from broken glass, smiling with too many teeth. Cole flickering in and out of visibility like a faulty hologram. And others. People I had never seen before. Decades of personnel, all the ones who had died or vanished from Epsilon 9, all returned in forms that mocked their original humanity. "Hello, Marcus," Palmer said, his voice wet and wrong. "We have been waiting for you to join us. It is peaceful here. Quiet, no more rules to follow. No more fear. Step away from them," Major Cortez ordered, his voice cracking. "They are not real. They are projections, hallucinations, something. They are not real. Are we not?" Henderson asked, tilting his head at an angle that would break a living neck. "We are more real than we ever were in life. We understand now. The depth of things. The truth beneath the surface," Mitchell screamed, not from fear but from something breaking inside her mind. She lunged at the nearest figure, hands grasping for something solid. Her fingers passed through it like smoke and she fell to the floor sobbing. Dr. Blackwell stood slowly, his face serene. "I knew you would come. I have been calling to you through my research. Learning your language. Offering myself as a bridge. And Richard, what are you doing?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "Accepting the inevitable. We were never meant to study this place. We were meant to join it, to add our patterns to the greater design." He walked toward the figures who parted to let him through. "They have shown me what lies beneath. The machinery that preceded creation. The mathematics that underlie reality. It is beautiful beyond comprehension." "Blackwell, stop," Major Cortez commanded. "That is an order." Dr. Blackwell paused and looked back at us with eyes that reflected something vast and incomprehensible. "Your orders have no authority here, Major. Only the deep has authority, and the deep is calling all of us home." He walked into the massive figures and vanished, absorbed into their impossible geometry. The figures began to move toward us, not walking exactly. More like the space between them and us was reducing without any actual motion. I grabbed Mitchell and pulled her to her feet. Major Cortez had his sidearm drawn, though we all knew bullets would be useless. "The door," I shouted, pulling Mitchell toward the exit. "Move now," we ran. Behind us, the figures followed with that same impossible motion, covering ground without taking steps. We made it into the corridor, slamming the heavy door behind us. Through the small window, I could see them standing in the central hub, watching us with dead eyes and wrong smiles. "Where do we go?" Mitchell asked, her voice raw from screaming. "They are everywhere. Inside the facility. In the walls. In the very air we breathe. The airstrip," I said. "If we can reach the emergency beacon, we can call for extraction." "They will never extract us," Major Cortez said, but he was already moving toward the equipment bay. "But perhaps we can die in the sun rather than in the dark." We suited up in heat-resistant gear, grabbed emergency supplies and moved toward the main airlock. The facility groaned around us, metal screaming against metal, as if the building itself was in pain. The grinding from below had become deafening, and the vibrations were strong enough to make walking difficult. Rule 1 said never go outside alone. Well, there were 3 of us. We would follow the rules to the very end. The airlock cycled open and we stepped out into the night. The desert was freezing, temperature having plummeted from its daytime extremes. Above us, stars burned with unusual intensity, arranged in patterns I had never seen before despite a lifetime of looking at the same sky. The figures surrounded the facility in complete silence. Hundreds of them now, maybe thousands, forming concentric rings that extended to the horizon. As we emerged, they all turned to face us in perfect synchronization. "Do not look at them directly," Major Cortez said. "Focus on the airstrip. Just focus on walking." We moved forward, stepping between the figures. They did not try to stop us. They simply watched, their presence a pressure against my mind that threatened to crush rational thought. I could feel them inside my head, whispering truths I did not want to understand, showing me the vastness that lurked beneath the thin crust of reality. We were halfway to the airstrip when Mitchell stopped walking. I turned to see her standing perfectly still, her face blank. "Sarah," I said, using her first name for the first time. "Sarah, keep moving." "I can see it now," she whispered. "The pattern. The design. It is not chaotic at all. It is perfect. Mathematical precision underlying everything. How did I not see it before?" "Mitchell, that is an order," Major Cortez barked. "Keep walking." She turned to look at us and her eyes were wrong. Not dead like the figures, but enlightened with knowledge that humans were not meant to possess. Orders are illusions. Structure is illusion. There is only the deep and what lives in the deep and what feeds the deep. We have always been food. Willing or unwilling, we feed it. She walked away from us toward the abandoned well that sat like a wound in the desert. Major Cortez and I shouted after her, but she did not respond. She walked with increasing speed, then broke into a run, her gear clanking with each step. She reached the well, climbed onto its edge, and jumped without hesitation. No scream, no sound of impact, just silence. Major Cortez made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh. "Two of us now, just two. Are you ready to be the last one standing, Webb? Because that is how this ends. One survivor stumbling out of the desert, mind shattered, telling stories no one will believe." "We are not dead yet," I said, though I did not believe my own words. We reached the airstrip and activated the emergency beacon. A red light began pulsing, sending out a distress signal that would reach headquarters within minutes. Now we just had to survive until extraction arrived. If extraction arrived, the figures had followed us, maintaining their distance but forming a solid wall between us and the facility. We sat on the cracked asphalt with our backs to each other, watching in all directions. "Tell me something, Webb," Major Cortez said after a long silence. "Did you have a normal life before this? Family, friends, dreams, anything worth surviving for?" "Yes," I said. "I had all of that. Hold on to it. When they start showing you other things, beautiful things, terrible things, truths that make your old life seem meaningless, remember what you had. Remember that humanity, for all its limitations, is worth preserving. Are you planning to give up, sir?" He laughed bitterly. "I gave up weeks ago. I am only still here out of spite, refusing to give them what they want. But I am tired, Marcus, so very tired." We sat in silence for another hour. The figures did not move. The stars wheeled overhead in their alien patterns. The grinding sound from beneath the facility grew louder, accompanied now by the sound of breaking rock, as if something enormous was pushing its way to the surface. Then Major Cortez stood up. "I am going to check on the beacon," he said. "It is working fine," I replied. "I can see the light. I need to check it anyway." He walked away before I could stop him, moving toward the beacon that sat another 50 yards away. I watched him, one hand on my radio, ready to call him back if he went too far. He reached the beacon and knelt beside it, examining the controls. Then he stood and kept walking, past the beacon, toward the desert, toward the horizon where the figures waited. "Major Cortez, stop," I called over the radio. "That is far enough." He did not respond, did not even pause. He walked with steady purpose, his stride lengthening, his pace increasing. I watched him disappear into the distance, swallowed by the darkness and the watching figures. I was alone. I sat on that airstrip for 6 hours, watching the night slowly give way to dawn. The figures remained throughout, but as the sun rose, they began to fade. Not retreating, but dissolving, like morning mist burning away under sunlight. By the time the sun fully cleared the horizon, they were gone. The facility stood silent in the distance, its white walls gleaming in the early light. Nothing moved. No sound emerged from it. It looked peaceful, abandoned. Just another relic slowly being reclaimed by the desert. The extraction helicopter arrived at 8:47 o'clock. A medical team rushed out, wrapped me in a thermal blanket, and loaded me aboard. As we lifted off, I watched the facility shrink below us. From this height, I could see the well clearly for the first time. Not just a circular stone structure, but part of something larger. Lines in the sand, barely visible, forming that same geometric pattern Mitchell had documented. The facility sat at the center of a design so vast it could only be appreciated from the air. a symbol etched into the earth itself over centuries or millennia. The pilot asked me questions I did not answer. The medics checked my vitals and declared me stable but in shock. No one asked about the other personnel. I think they already knew. At headquarters, I spent 3 weeks in medical observation. Psychiatrists visited daily, asking gentle questions about stress, isolation, hallucinations. I told them everything. The rules, the figures, the disappearances, the things that lived beneath the facility. They nodded sympathetically and adjusted my medications. My official report was filed and classified. I was told Epsilon 9 had been decommissioned pending safety investigations. I was given a medical discharge with full honors and benefits. I was thanked for my service and told to forget about my time in the desert, but I cannot forget. Even now, years later, safe in a city far from that cursed place I cannot forget, I follow the rules still. Never alone, though the rule did not save anyone. Never respond to voices calling my name, though sometimes I hear them anyway. I avoid standing still for too long, conscious of how easy it would be to become like those figures. I close my doors at 21 o'clock every night. I do not investigate strange sounds. When the temperature drops unexpectedly, I seek companionship immediately, and I never look into wells, storm drains, or deep holes in the ground, because I know now what the rules were really for. Not to keep us safe. That was never possible. The rules were designed to delay the inevitable, to buy time, to maintain the illusion that we had control, that following procedures could protect us from forces that existed before procedures had meaning. The rules were a test, to see who would break first, to select the ones who would join what waited below. And everyone broke eventually. Palmer, Henderson, Foster, Sullivan, Cole, Mitchell, Dr. Blackwell, Major Cortez, all of them broke. All of them were taken. I survived not because I was stronger or smarter or more faithful to the rules. I survived because I was last. Because something needed to carry the story out, to spread the knowledge of what lies beneath Death Valley, to warn others even though the warning will never be heeded, because even now new personnel are being stationed at Epsilon 9. I know because I have accessed the classified files. The facility was never decommissioned. That was a lie. It reopened 3 months after my extraction, with a new team of 6. New faces, new names, same rules written on metal cards, and those 6 will disappear just like the ones before them. And 6 more will take their place, and 6 more after that, an endless cycle of feeding. Because the deep is patient and the deep is hungry, and we are nothing but food, dressed in uniforms and given rules to follow. Sometimes at night, I dream of that grinding sound, the sound of massive machinery turning beneath the earth, gears that have no purpose except to grind human consciousness into whatever sustains the things that live in the spaces between spaces. I wake in terror, checking doors and windows, making sure I'm not back in that desert facility. But part of me wonders if I ever truly left. If perhaps I am still sitting on that airstrip, waiting for extraction that will never come, while my mind creates this elaborate fantasy of escape and survival. Perhaps the real Marcus Webb jumped into the well like Mitchell. Perhaps the real Marcus Webb opened his door at night like Sullivan. Perhaps the real Marcus Webb is standing motionless in the desert right now, arranged with hundreds of others in a geometric pattern that spells out truths in a language older than words. I have the metal rules card still, kept in a locked box in my closet. Sometimes I take it out and read the 7 rules again, running my fingers over the etched text, feeling the warmth of the metal that never quite fades. The dark red filling the grooves has been confirmed as human blood. Multiple sources dating back to 1967. Rule 1, never go outside alone ever, not for 30 seconds. Not for any reason. Rule 2, do not respond to voices calling your name from outside the facility. Rule 3, if you see someone standing perfectly still in the desert, report it immediately but do not approach. Rule 4, close all interior doors before 21 o'clock. Keep them closed until 6 o'clock. Rule 5, do not investigate sounds coming from the ventilation system at night. Rule 6, if the temperature inside drops below 70 degrees after sunset, gather in the central hub immediately. Rule 7, never shine a light into the abandoned well behind the facility. Never look into it. Never go near it. 7 rules written in blood. 7 ways to die. 7 methods by which the deep claims those who venture into its territory. I survived weather research facility Epsilon 9, but I did not escape it. The desert follows me. The grinding follows me. The whispers from the ventilation grates follow me, even in buildings that have nothing to do with that cursed place. And sometimes, when I look out my window after midnight, breaking the rule that was never officially given but always understood, I see figures standing in the street below, standing perfectly still, watching my window with faces I recognize: Palmer, Henderson, Foster, Sullivan, Cole, Mitchell, Dr. Blackwell, Major Cortez, waiting for me to join them, waiting for me to understand what they understand, waiting for me to stop following the rules and accept the inevitable. Because the deep is patient, and the deep is hungry, and eventually everyone feeds it. I am writing this account as a warning. Not that the warning will matter. People will read this and dismiss it as fiction, as the ravings of a damaged mind as entertainment. That is what I would have done before I experienced it myself. But if you are military personnel receiving orders for Weather Research Facility Epsilon 9 in Death Valley, California, know this: the facility exists. The rules exist. The things that lurk beneath exist, and you will not escape them by following procedures or maintaining discipline or convincing yourself that rational explanations exist for everything you witness. You are not being sent to research weather patterns. You are being sent to feed something that has no name in human languages, something that existed before our species crawled out of the oceans, something that will exist long after we are gone. The rules will not save you. They will only determine how you are taken, quickly or slowly, violently or peacefully, aware or confused, but you will be taken. That is the only certainty. I was 27 years old when I arrived at Epsilon 9. I am 31 now. 4 years have passed, though it feels like a lifetime. I do not sleep well. I do not trust silence. I do not look out windows after dark. And I listen, always listen for the sound of grinding beneath my feet, for the whispers in the air vents, for my name being called by voices that should not know it, because I know the truth now. The truth they do not want you to understand until it is too late. We are not at the top of the food chain. We have never been at the top. We are livestock, carefully managed, periodically culled, feeding something so vast and ancient that our individual lives mean nothing to it. The rules exist not to protect us, but to make the feeding more interesting, to add variety, to test different methods of harvest. Death Valley was named correctly, not because of heat or harsh conditions, but because it is a valley of death, a place where the membrane between our world and deeper places has worn thin through millennia of use. The facility was built there deliberately, positioned over the anomaly like a farmhouse over a slaughterhouse pit. We are the livestock. The facility is the pen. The rules are the gates that direct us toward different chutes, and what waits at the end is patient and eternal and utterly indifferent to our suffering. That is what I learned in 63 days at Epsilon 9. That is what I carry with me every day since. That is what waits for anyone who accepts assignment there. Follow the rules if you want, break them if you prefer. In the end, it makes no difference. The deep takes everyone eventually, and when it does, you will understand. You will see the patterns. You will hear the grinding. You will join the others standing motionless in the desert, waiting for the next crew to arrive, waiting to welcome them home, to the deep, to the place we were always meant to be. I survived Epsilon 9, but the question that haunts me every night is simple and terrible: did I really?